Hey guys, welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 559 being recorded on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019, I think. I'm Sebastian
You're
Page.
correct. And I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath, and I'm not going to cut off my words like Sebastian is right now. You know, I can almost do a Phil Hartman with that. It just is really
Almost.
Yeah, I thought you were doing a Shatner, but it seamlessly transitioned to Hartman. I appreciated that.
Shatner would be like,
we don't have time for Shatner.
In
We're still waiting.
5 minutes.
the middle of the Mississippi. No. Okay.
So a number of things going on. We're actually going to lead with news this time. We're going to try something a little bit different. We're doing a little bit of a shorter show for reasons this week. We didn't have a show last week. We're getting back on track slowly. So we're going to get through some news topics here, cover a little bit of some of the review output we've had in the last 2 weeks, which is pretty considerable. But first, there was a big event today, guys. I don't know if anybody actually watched through it. They were live streaming it. Microsoft had a Surface event, and we were, you know, the people over at Threadripper.com, I think it was actually Mehdi who posted this, but basically like everything that was announced at the Surface event. Jeremy, you wrote up a post for us about this. What can you tell us about Microsoft's latest Surfaces?
Well, I mean, there's sort of 4 big families that were interesting and got announced. The first, as you'd expect, is a brand new set of Surface laptops, sticking with the normal 13.5, 15, and 17-inch models. But the interesting thing is the 15-inch model, also known as the AMD Ryzen Microsoft Surface Edition, which is inside of it for the first time ever, a custom, they didn't specify exactly how, but customized Ryzen 7 chip with Vega graphics, which is a huge win for AMD and great for those that like a choice, because you can still go with a 15-inch that is Intel powered, and the 13.5s are all Intel powered with Ice Lake. So we're finally going to get our hands on this new processor and the new graphics core, which will be rather interesting. And the 17 inches, possibly Ice Lake, but I didn't really see specifics on what it is. So it's quite possible that you're stuck with a slightly older version, possibly paired with some sort of graphics core. All of them have USB-C, which is just wonderful and, quite frankly, far too late in coming. But what we didn't sort of see coming and expecting is that they have removable SSDs now. So if you do end up wanting to upgrade or your SSD dies, you actually can easily swap it out, which is a big step for Surface. So a lot of changes there. The Surface Pro X, which is a little more interesting. I sort of think of it as an iPad Pro type device, except it's running a fully functional version of Windows 10. It's ARM powered, and it has a fancy SQ1 chipset, which I haven't seen before, but incorporates Qualcomm Snapdragon for graphics. It's being claimed to be about 3 times the performance of the previous one. The screen is beautiful, 2880 by 1920 on the 12-inch high contrast screen. And it's got a slightly slimmer pen which comes with it. And the pen can actually be stored in the optional keyboard that you can order, which snaps on like previously we've seen in them. So it gives you all the functionality of that iPad Pro, but you're actually running a full-out Windows on ARM, which is interesting and much better than the original way that we saw Windows come to ARM. The Neo is the one that we posted about earlier. That is the foldable laptop. So essentially, you've got two 5 points. You've got two, I believe it was 11-inch screens attached via a hinge, so that the top can function as a display as you'd expect. The bottom can actually become a keyboard and trackpad and such, so that you, as well as accepting input from a pen, so that you actually get a chance to type away on it, or you can use it foldable like you've seen it. So it's a full sort of magazine sized. Thankfully, they didn't go the Samsung way and try and make the screen bendable, so the hinge is unlikely to snap and break very quickly. They've also gone with the optional keyboard on this as well. It'll either magnetically clip on to the bottom screen so that you can still type with a little bit of tactile feedback, because typing directly on a touchpad can be odd for those that aren't used to it. And it doesn't cover the whole thing, so you still get your trackpad and some extra features that can be shown below the keyboard. And it's also Bluetooth, so if you just want to keep the two screens, you can still happily use it. Then finally is what some have been waiting for and some are scratching their heads about. There's a new Intel, or a new Microsoft phone. The Surface Phone, or Surface Duo, as they like to call it, is very much a scaled down version of the Neo that I just mentioned. So you've got two 5.6-inch screens and a hinge, and so you can use it folded out like a relatively decent sized tablet, albeit with a bezel in the middle, or you can fold it all the way around 360 so that it's about the size of a large phone nowadays. You're, again, not going to have worry about the same issues that you do if you pick up a Samsung Fold. The chances are it is going to survive. The hinge looks very similar to what we've been seeing on these sorts of devices before. It's just a wee bit smaller, and as I mentioned, it is a phone. So it's got some certain apps. It will be Android powered, believe it or not. Now, it will be skinned to look like Windows X OS, which the Neo is running. But at the heart of it, it is actually going to be an Android phone. So we're not seeing Windows Mobile come back, which is really a good thing, because that was just a nasty, nasty experience. Those two foldable devices we're not going to see until sometime probably late in 2020. The other two will be around very, very soon. So if you're looking at getting a Ryzen powered Surface, or if you're interested in an ARM powered one, or you'll finally want to get your hands on Ice Lake, should be able to do that fairly soon.
I love the fact that there is now a Windows 10X coming on the heels of, like the public having to get used to calling an iPhone X 10. Roman numerals are popular for Super Bowls, but I think that's pretty much the extent of most Americans' familiarity with them. But yeah, 10X, and then the Surface Pro X, which is pronounced X and not 10, I assume. Why? I don't understand why.
No, there is no why yet. That's yoga.
Josh, do you have any thoughts about the Surface announcements before we move on to our next exciting news topic?
AMD. Qualcomm.
AMD, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. That both of them, it's a whatchamacallit. They're both supposedly custom parts. AMD is a custom with Zen Plus and Vega 9 and 11, I believe. Did you already go over this? Did I miss it? What was I thinking? Was I looking over Kindle crap for links? Talk about this, Tom.
I was looking, and Gordon Maung over at PC World was saying that it's either going to have a Ryzen 7 3780U with Vega 11 graphics, or a Ryzen 5 3580U with Vega 9 graphics. So I don't know if they got that confirmed there.
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean there could be some specialty stuff in there that Microsoft has, asked them to do. What is that? The
TDP looks right. I mean, like a 15-watt part makes sense. Haven't they gone up to 25 watts in the Surface Pro devices before? So I mean,
yeah, and with Ice Lake, you'll be able to toggle that as well.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it has the TDP up.
And then the what is it? The S10, S1. What's the SQ?
SQ1.
SQ1. Yeah, it's that it kind of looks like very similar to the Qualcomm. What is their big laptop ARM chip that they made a big deal about 6 months ago? Come on, think, damn it.
I don't remember.
HCX.
That's the one.
Yes,
this looks very, very similar, but it might have, again, a kind of semi-custom part that Microsoft worked with Qualcomm on. to give them a few more things with machine learning, slightly better graphics. I think they made it a little bit more robust than what they have, but it still fits in that same kind of TDP range. It's 7 nanometer apart. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see where Microsoft is going. They're really, sowing the seeds of multiple interesting hardware choices, and AMD is going to be happy, Qualcomm's going to be happy. I mean, the Surface R, isn't that what it was called, or whatever the ARM based one that just
ART and
it was bad.
Surface Pro.
They're kind of working around that. They have a much better translation layer in software that works so much better. I mean, stuff just actually kind of works. I mean, maybe not always great. You're not going to want this for like gaming and other heavy duty stuff, but things that are compiled for the ARM stuff is going to run perfectly fine. They're going to have good TDP. Really, it's going to be snappy. All the good things that came from that HCX is going to be a little bit better in this, and I think a little bit better engineered overall in terms of build quality and stuff that Surface has become known for. So this is a really nice offering because they've got what the 10 series from Intel in some of them. They've got the dual screen. They've got interesting design choices. They're expanding out their product portfolio and product line. And they're spreading the love around in terms of hardware. And so this is a big boost for AMD, and hopefully it will be a continuing thing. And then maybe we'll see, Zen 2 and what is the latest thing called? Not Polaris Vega, but
RDNA, Navi.
Navi. God, there's just too many code words running around my brain.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
You mentioned, Josh, something about 10 series, and that's a wonderful transition that I'll borrow from to move on to the next topic, which was Intel, who, I don't know, there was this leak on videocards.com, supposedly valid information about these new Intel high-end desktop parts, and then Intel decided to release some information about these. There's a couple of slides they've actually publicly released. I wrote up a quick post on this to get those on the site, and the new Cascade Lake-X products that are coming. This is 10th gen, but it's high-end desktop, so those are generally a little bit behind. This is still based on Skylake architecture. It's still going to be 14 nanometer, but what they're doing is being extremely aggressive on clocks, as we can see here, but even more aggressive on price. And the pricing that we'd seen, what Jeremy posted based on the videocards.com link has been corroborated by Intel officially. And if you're listening, I will read to you these. There's only 4 SKUs they've released so far, but there's the Core i9, and these are those longer product names, the 10900X, and that is going to be, that's 10 cores, 20 threads, $590. And these are 1K tray prices, so we don't know what the actual retail is going to be. This is if you bought 1,000 units from them. But then the 10920X, you move up to a 12 core 24 thread part, and that's important because now we're looking at direct competition with the 3900X if you could buy one, and that's $689. So now instead of their cheapest 12 core 24 thread part being $1,200, and AMD more than having that with the $499 list price of that 3900X, now Intel is coming out with a part that's within about $100 of it, which is interesting. And then we move up to the 10940X, which is 14 cores, 28 threads. That's $784. And then the top of the heap is the 10980XE, which is their Extreme Edition, super high-end, 18 core, 36 thread part. And that is $979. And to give you a frame of reference, if you don't memorize processor, core counts and pricing, if you go on to Amazon right now and try to buy their current high-end, which is the Core i9 9980XE, so you're a high-end desktop user, you want to build an Intel desktop, you're not interested in AMD right now, that's $1,989, $2,000 basically just for the CPU. And that's their 18 core 36 thread part right now. So when these hit and they're saying November, it's going to be less than half as much. I mean, we'll have to look at what street prices are, but like Jeremy said, it's half. So they're giving you roughly twice the performance per dollar, and that's if there weren't any architectural advantages, any actual performance increases gen over gen, which I'm sure there will be. But you know, these clocks look pretty aggressive too. But,
you know,
well, right. So there's nothing on here about PCIe 4. It says PCIe 3.0 lanes on the chart. It's higher now, up to 72 lanes. So if there's 24 lanes in X299, that means that would be 48 lanes for these, unless something is changing with
PCIe
with
3X.
chipset.
So as compared to 16 for the Kentucky Shroud edition.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to move up from just the regular K series parts to high-end desktop, I mean, look at the price difference. If you were to get a 9900K right now, that's it's selling, I think, usually for around 450 to 480. But go about $100 more, and you can get a CPU with more threads. You go from 8 and 16 to 10 and 20 on the core and thread count. Lower clocks, but still, I mean, the turbo up to 4.5 and, you know, more PCIe lanes. So if you're lane constrained, and that's got you down, like, and the previously, like, jumping up to high-end desktop on Intel is such a huge financial hurdle. This makes such a difference.
To, say, the X570 boards.
Right. Yeah, I mean, AMD, it was staggering to see the core counts, obviously, they've been able to deliver with Zen 2. And just a tremendous amount of, you know, PCIe lanes in addition to all of those cores, and that's such a low price per core. Intel had to do something, and they're clearly doing something. We'll have to look at what the rest of the lineup looks like when they announce all of that stuff, but X series looks pretty competitive. I don't know what you guys think about. I mean, obviously the pricing is super aggressive.
It's a huge change for Intel. I mean, it's I mean, we're going to drop our prices essentially by half in this performance segment, and yeah, you're still going to be paying plenty for motherboards, but yeah, not that much more than you know, a 3900X from AMD at $450, $499, and a high-end X570 board. So yeah, they're right in the ballpark, and they're going to talk about their boost, and they're going to talk about their IPC, and they're going to show off some of the other good things that are coming with the what is it, Cascade again? Cascade Lake?
Yes, Cascade Lake.
Yeah, not Lakefield. That's the other one.
Now these are still 14 plus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they haven't quite gotten 10 nanometer to hit those 165 watt TDPs. But yeah, the you know, the biggest thing that we're probably going to see AMD really harp on is, you know, we've got next generation PCIe 4.0. We've got NVMe drives that actually can burst at that speed. You know, we're not talking, you know, really crazy mixed kind of workloads that will saturate a PCIe 4.0 bus, much less PCIe 3.0. But you know, it's a selling point for them, and you know, they're going to put out the 5700s. They're going to probably put out the 5500s soon. They will all support PCIe 4.0, and they're going to trumpet that stuff to the moon because it is a major jump. I mean, Intel has had the lead on next generation PCIe specifications since they introduced it way back in the day with PCIe 4.0, 1.0. So yeah, fun stuff. Glad Intel is getting going there, and especially more PCIe lanes because they've been really stingy.
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat. Like, thank you, Intel, for making previous 980XE owners feel price gouge. You know what? I feel your pain. If you spent $1,200 thinking, no, I'm all in on Intel within the last year or so, how bad would you feel if there was a part that outperformed it that was half the cost a year later?
I don't
But
know,
hey,
like
that's
someone
the
who
price.
bought a 2080 Ti.
Yeah, but that's still the king of the hill. Like, where is the GPU?
Or
that
sorry, a
supplants the
2080,
Ti
yes,
right now?
as opposed to a
Okay,
Super.
right. You're right.
That's
Yeah, if
what
you
I
bought a
mean.
non-super anything, if I spent $700 on even a 2080, and the 2070 Super comes out that's roughly the same performance, depending on which aftermarket card you buy, I would be a little annoyed. But hey, that's the same thing has happened to me before. Buy something, and right away it's like $200 less. Speaking of buying things, Jeremy, you wrote this up. AMD Ryzen Pro series. Now, we'd seen leaks about these lower wattage non-X variants of some of the Ryzen 3000 CPUs, and it made sense that those would be coming. What would happen if you just don't clock them as aggressively and hit that 65 watt TDP target? And obviously the 3700X already does that, but you could fit them into some smaller form factors, eh?
Yeah. In fact, popular small form factors like Lenovo ThinkCenters and HP Elite desks, which is another big win for AMD. Again, you weren't really seeing AMD as a choice in these, let alone them being one of the primary models. So with the 3000 series, you've got 2 Ryzen Pro families, and there's even an Athlon Pro for those of you who really want to go back. Essentially, you've got a 9, a 7, and a 5 Pro, the 3900, 3700, and 3600, which lack Vega graphics, but make up for it in core counts, where you've the high-end Ryzen 9 3900 has 12 cores and 24 threads. It'll boost up to 4.3 gigahertz, has 70 megabytes of pooled cache, and is 65 watt. This is great. This is a tiny little machine that you can fit on your desk without taking up much room, and you get a lot of power. You want to go even more entertaining, there's Ryzen 5 Pro 3400G, a 3400GE, and the same with the 3s with a 3200G and GE. They come with Radeon Vega graphics built in. The 5s have 11 CUs, while the 3s are only 8 CUs. But still, this gives you everything that you need right off the bat. And sure, the 5s are the only multi-thread. It's the 3s, you are going to have 4 cores and 4 threads. But then again, depending on which model you take, you can drop your TDP down to 35 watts, which is just, wild and wacky for a desktop processor. The Athlon Pro, if you want to have fun, the 300GE gives you 2 cores and 4 threads, still at a 35 watt TDP. Although 3 CUs is going to hurt you a little bit, but if you're doing a point of sale thing, or if you're looking at, one of the old sort of style machines that you can attach with a VESA mount to the back of your monitor, that's what it's going to be brilliant for. So we're going to see these coming out. And the other part was with the pros, and we've seen this before, is they focus a little bit more on hardware mitigation of, memory attacks, and are completely compliant with TPM 2.0 and a couple of the other things that you can get that are baked into Windows. So the idea being that not only is it reasonably priced, relatively small, it's also designed for security. So it's just beautiful for a business that's doesn't have a lot of money to throw around, but is looking to upgrade to something that they know is going to be secure and keep them happy for a couple of years. So this is really nice to see for AMD. Like, they're in the Surface. Now we've got HP and Lenovo going for them. And as we're seeing more of the pictures come out, the systems are tiny and they're relatively nice looking. So I expect to see that a few of these in the market going on sale very soon that people are going to be scooping up. And yes, it does have a DVD drive.
As all proper computers should.
Oh man, that totally sold me on that.
I thought it would.
Better get my wallet out.
I wonder how long it'll be until you can find these, like the 3900 non-X part on eBay. Because there's certain lower TDP parts from AMD recently, I think, that I had to search for from Asian sellers, and they weren't actually in the US pipeline. But I've not heard any. I don't know if you guys have heard anything if they're actually going to be selling like a non-X 3900 outside of the OEM market, but
if there's a market for it, sure.
Yeah.
You know, do it for $75 less. And, you know, you don't have nearly the boost and overclocking ability, but it's a lot of cores. It's a lot of threads.
There's a lot of cores.
And it's 65 watt TDP. That's nice. This chiplet thing, it might have a future.
I think so. I think you're onto something, Josh. But you know, there was some other news. We've heard ramblings. We've heard news about. I know Jeremy posted about delays, potentially coming up for chip makers, supply problems for both Intel and AMD. We talked about this a few months ago. It's the same rumors are swirling around again, and I don't know if that's behind this or not. But right after our last show, when I was off that week, but Jim posted news on the 20th of this delay. AMD actually officially came out and announced the delay of the 3950X, which originally was slated for September. Of course, that was nearing the end of the month. They weren't ready, so it's been delayed until November now. Now, there's speculation about why it's been delayed. Their official statement says, we are focusing on meeting the strong demand for our third generation AMD Ryzen processors in the market and now plan to launch both the AMD Ryzen 9 3950X and initial members of the third gen AMD Ryzen Threadripper processor family in volume this November. So what do you guys think? Is this because they're just kind of stockpiling, they want to sell in greater volume? Or when you look at the lack of a lot of 3900Xs in the market already, and then some of the speculation about capacity problems maybe with TSMC. What do you think? Is this maybe 7 nanometer related, or is it? I heard a rumor about clock speeds, that maybe they weren't hitting the clock speeds that they had advertised for the 3950X. They were holding off. Is that viable?
I think my gut feeling here is that they only have so many wafer starts. 7 nanometer looks like it's pretty healthy. The design looks like it's good. But they're probably funneling off as many of the high-end, good binning chips to EPYC rather than doing desktop, which is what, $750 for the 3950X versus you can throw some of those chips into a $6,000 to $12,000 part. What are you going to do? So can you guys hear that? All the rattling in the back?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so
it just sounds like
happy.
It sounds like you're in a
my
fine
family's doing
restaurant,
dishes.
Josh.
Yep.
Look,
it is. I live in a restaurant. I've asked them to please.
You need a cigar and maybe a glass of something, and it's fine. It's just a nice ambient sound.
I need
it's like a sound effect. Free sound effects. So yeah, out of this bad news, of course, they peppered in a little bit of good news. The news about the new Threadripper starting at 24 cores, 48 threads. Of course, there's no pricing or anything yet, but original Threadripper, of course, launched at 16 cores. The high was 32, of course, with the 2990WX part. But starting at 24 is promising, especially if it launches at similar pricing. And now that we've seen Intel be very aggressive with their HEDT stuff, that would be it's going to be interesting to see how AMD responds, of course, with Threadripper, and maybe they negate some of Intel's progress there.
They've got, with the chiplet design, they can do some interesting mixing and matching. And they can throw some granularity into there versus just big monolithic dies.
And right now they can't make chips fast enough to keep up with demand. So why push into a new chip when especially with EPYC and the fact that they're getting better, presumably better margins on EPYC.
At least Threadripper, these could be like EPYC chips that don't quite hit
exactly. Yeah.
hit the
Yes.
specs, and they can throw that down as like, hey, look, Threadripper, and they can recover some of these that may not have been fabbed as well or just didn't turn out to hit the marks. And it's a nice area to put them in. You cut down some of the thread count, but you increase the power delivered to them, and suddenly you've got this great performing Threadripper chip that is less expensive than Epic, but more expensive than the what is it now? What the hell is this socket they called? God, my brain is broken. It's so broke.
15
AM4. Jeez.
Yeah.
The socket that just won't die. The socket that's
and that's perfectly fine. But you know what? The dishes seemingly do not die behind me, and it has rattled my brain.
I was going to say something, but I have no transition at all. My mind is a blank. Let's move on quickly to some of the reviews that were posted over the last couple of weeks. A number of them, but here's just a few of them. Fractal Design, if I enunciate, or Fractal, as they're apparently transitioning to. They have another case, and I was skeptical when they contacted me about this, because the last time we looked at a Fractal Design case, it was basically a Define case where they'd taken the side panels in the front off of it and put tempered glass. So it was like tempered glass on the back, on the both sides, on the front, the top. It was extremely expensive. It was $239 for that Vision S2 case that I reviewed. In retrospect, and I was surprised when I went and looked at my other review and thinking, like, I was this positive about it, because it didn't age well. The longer I thought about it, probably the less positive the review would have actually gone. So in being a little bit more critical this time, I get this new case, the Vector RS, and my initial thinking and looking over some of the specs was that, okay, here we go again. The only positive I could see initially was that it was going to cost less. This one is going to be $179.99. But in taking it out of the box, looking it over and building with it, I was very impressed, and I feel like this is what Fractal should have done from the beginning. If you want a Fractal Design case and you're in that mid-tower looking for sort of a mid-premium price point, you can spend up to $200, say. The Define cases, which are less than that, they usually are in the $150 to $170 range, I think, depending on whether you get tempered glass or not. Those are like go-to cases. They're very, very popular with builders for a reason. If you're looking for a quiet enclosure, I was very impressed with the R5 and the R6. I don't think I was the one who reviewed the R4 back in the day, but they're outstanding. And kind of this modular design approach where you can take out the hard drive bays, make it an open case, add them back in. In fact, the R6 even still has a single optical drive bay, and the R5 had two. But anyway, this is essentially the R6 internally. It even has the modular approach to the top panel where you can pull off the top panel. You can replace it with a vented one instead of a solid one, which in this case, of course, is glass. But you can have that completely removed. Inside the box, it comes with an alternate vented top panel and the requisite filter and bracket for installing, fans and radiators up top. But overall, I mean, if you've seen the R6 or seen any reviews like our review of the R6, you've seen the inside of this new Vector RS case. I found it to be identical. The only thing that's really different is the outside. And then they did this really, I think, tasteful implementation of RGB, very much along the lines of the Be Quiet Dark Base 700 we reviewed earlier this year, where you have just a single kind of continuous light strip going around. It's subtle, and you can make it match your motherboard lighting if your motherboard, as so many have, like an RGB header on them. And I had a purple theme going with the motherboard and the cooler, so I just added this to the motherboard and it just lit up purple. So it was a very subtle approach to RGB, where normally we see tempered glass RGB. That means there's going to be 3 fans up front that are RGB. And I welcome a less ostentatious approach. So overall, thermals and noise are a big deal because this is a Fractal design case. It's supposed to have low noise. And that previous tempered glass Fractal case I looked at had way higher noise levels than we expect from Fractal because it was having to spin the fans a lot faster to cool adequately. But they revised the intake on this. There's more space between the slats up front. They're a different design. And it took in a little bit more air. I was impressed. It was about 32 decibels at idle from a foot away with my sound meter. And it barely rose under load with the components I was using. So if you're using quiet components, that's kind of the key to any tempered glass case, because it's not going to insulate as well as something like the Define R6, which has those sound dampening pads inside of the side and front panels and top panels. So anyway, I think this is like a return to form for them and easily their best attempt at a tempered glass enclosure. You can't really go wrong when you base it on the Define R6 anyway. So check out the full review if you want to see lots of pictures and things. I didn't go really into the build because it's the same as the R6, but I linked back to that older review. And of course, during the review process, my RTX 2070 died on me, so I have to pick out a new graphics card for the enclosure test going forward. But I finally got to experience the dreaded Space Invaders myself. I stared at my screen like, no, this is not happening. And it was. And it was irreversible. But very quickly, I know Josh... I did not yet. I still have the card. It's actually right here. But I've not tried fixing it yet.
Oh, it's an
Not the company or anything. But yeah, I liked that card. And one of the reasons I liked it was... I mean, it's not disparaging it, but it actually produced enough noise under load for me to measure something. Because there's a lot of cards that either have ultra quiet fans, or they have a fan profile where basically the temperature is always the same regardless of which case they're in, which is useless. I don't need a card that's always 72C that just ramps up the fan speed. So then you have to create custom fan. Anyway, I'm getting too far into this. We'll talk about that some more another time. But I was very impressed with the case. Give it the editor's choice. And I went into it thinking I'm going to be really hard on this. I'm like, wow, this is great. So it won me over.
I know quickly. That LED light line thing looks sharp.
Yeah. Sharp. Kind of zigzags. It does look sharp. It zigzags down the front. It's asymmetrical. Has kind of that Corsair Alpha series look to the case.
You know, we're just getting closer and closer to Tron. Living in a Tron world.
Yeah, I mean,
lights, LEDs, I guess everywhere.
Did the purple light inspire you?
Yeah,
I have brand new cars with their LED
I drive a
headlights.
car, actually.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice. Anyway, yeah, Tron.
I mean, I don't have a Mustang. I don't have a Mustang like certain people here, but you know, I have a Mazda 3. It gets me from point A to point B.
Sporty.
Yeah, I mean, it feels sporty when you put it in the sport mode, but it does not feel sporty when it's in its normal mode. It feels like, yeah, you press down the gas, and about 3 seconds later decides, oh, should I be accelerating now? As you veer off the highway to avoid being struck by a semi truck. Corsair. Now, Corsair's had gaming headsets for a long time. Everybody has gaming headsets. One of the things about Corsair's lineup was it was like kind of like most of them were, I think, were on the southern end of $100. There were a few that were more. I think they maybe went up to $159 with the Void Pro RGB, but they didn't really have an ultra premium headset. We looked at the ROG Delta earlier this year, which was pretty high end, but still under $200. It was $179. We've seen multiple headsets like the HyperX one I looked at recently with the Odyssey planar magnetic drivers. It's $300. And of course, the Odyssey headset that it's based on is $400. So and I've seen some Sennheisers. I think Chris Koch looked at some Sennheisers earlier this year, maybe the end of last year. They were like $300. Now Corsair has some more ultra premium headsets on offer, although not too expensive. Even the high end, the SE, which is the slightly higher end of the two, is only $209. But what we're looking at here are headsets. These are wireless and wired, so you have your choice of an analog connection. USB, uses a Type-C to Type-A cable, or wireless, comes with a dongle, so it's 2.4 gigahertz, uses the slipstream wireless technology. And there's a lot of aluminum with the construction of these, especially the SE. And we're talking like aluminum yokes and aluminum trim, aluminum ear cup construction, even aluminum on the microphone. Yeah, look, the microphone.
Okay, that's impressive.
Has aluminum on both ends, like the connector and the mic itself is aluminum. It's just you hold this thing.
Have you thrown it down the stairs yet for that kind of test?
I couldn't bring myself to do that, but if you've ever held a gaming headset and it like kind of creaks, there's like that plasticky, like even these AKG like headphones of mine, which are like the low end, like $70 monitors, but these are plastic and they're kind of, they make some noise. These headsets were dead quiet. They felt very substantial, not too heavy. They're in the 13 to 14 ounce range, but very, very well made, especially the SE. That thing is like a tank. The non-SE, I got a white one for some reason. I asked for a white one. I'm like, maybe this will help me differentiate between the two. But really, once I saw it in person, the SE is just completely different. And I don't think it's even that much of a premium, $20 more for this. And it has like this laser etched RGB effect where the logo is almost invisible unless the RGB lighting is on, and then it just kind of glows through these holes that are in the side of it. But anyway, these are headphones, so I should probably talk about the sound a little bit, although sound, it's subjective. I don't have special equipment to measure the frequency response or anything. All of those numbers are great, of course, on paper, and these are using a new 50 millimeter driver from them. So I'm thinking it's going to have some more bass, and there's kind of a gaming headset sound you often get where I've described it as like a smile EQ. You have a little bit recessed mid-range, so the bass is more prominent, and it makes the treble sound more prominent. But these were very flat sounding, very audiophile sounding. Didn't have really deep low bass though, which was a little disappointing. And that's pretty much the only fault. They definitely sounded better plugged in via USB. The wireless dongle uses a slightly lower, it goes up to 48 kilohertz. That's not a big deal. All the content I was listening to was like 44 or 48, except for a couple of high-res files just to try out 96 when it was plugged in, because it'll do 96 kilohertz, 24-bit when it's plugged in. But regardless, it sounded a little clearer, a little better plugged in. So I would personally use these as a wired headset. Microphone quality was very good. They have really clear mid-range and treble. Some of the clearest I've ever heard from a gaming headset, certainly, and one of the best headphones I've ever heard for that. So if clarity of sound matters to you, these are exceptionally good. And I think the consensus, when I looked around the web after my review went up, I felt like people were kind of saying the same thing. I didn't really love the microphone. The quality of the mic is great, but it's omnidirectional, so it doesn't do a very good job of rejecting background noise. Omni is pretty common for these mics, though, unfortunately. I'd love it if it were unidirectional and you can kind of aim it at your mouth and not pick up a bunch of noise around the room. And the other issue I had with it was possibly because of the design. There's a slot cut into the aluminum for the mic. It was picking up wind noise like you wouldn't believe. So like just breathing, it was picking up every like breath from my nose. I was angling it away from my face to cut down on wind noise, but throw a foam pop filter on it and it would probably be fine. But very, very impressed by the sound, but don't get these if you like that like chest thumping bass, which I know Josh is a bass head and he's all about like his bassy headphones.
I know, because when I need that chest thumping bass, I take if they got a really good headband, then I can squeeze it onto my chest and then I turn it up really loud and it feels like someone's pushing their finger.
Plus, when you're listening
chest
to
thumping bass,
they can sort of simulate it. You can feel it from certain headphones, but when you're listening to 128K MP3s like Josh,
it's CD quality,
there
baby.
Really isn't any
CD quality.
The last review
is a pomegranate.
I have not. have not actually read this, but I like looking at this picture. Chris Koch posted a review of the Cooler Master MM710, and this is an ultralight mouse. This is that category I have not personally experienced, but it's crazy, like 53 grams. I think something in the 40 to 50 grams is the lowest out there right now, if I'm not mistaken. But look at this thing. Like the Cooler Master logo shape has been cut out of this in various places to reduce mass and weight and just make it feather light. Have either of you used one of these ultralight mice yet?
Nope.
I have not. But it's got a PixArt 3389 sensor.
Collect a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, I'd keep a vacuum cleaner handy. He says it's one of the most affordable and accessible options for an ultralight mouse. Simple. He said it didn't make me a better gamer overnight, but it did feel more like an extension of my arm than any other mouse I've used. That's pretty high praise, I guess. I mean, at some point, these get so light, you probably just feel like you're waving your hand around on your desk, which, you know, I guess that would be a sensation. I will have to try one of these. Seems like the quality is good, and we're familiar with that sensor. But ultra light. Check out the full review, though. I'm not doing it justice. Cooler Master MM710 Pro Grade Mouse. Ultra light with ultra weave. That's what they're calling it. Picks of the week. Let's get those in. Jeremy, you are up first.
Did you know that the game where you do shit just cuz is 69 or 67% off right now? So if you enjoyed Just Cause,
the Go one or the Just Cause?
No,
dang it. I thought you were talking about the new unnamed
Goose Game
simulator. Yeah,
I think I did that previously, and besides, it's only on Epic, which just annoys me.
Yeah,
but it's still pretty epic.
At $20, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it coming out on Steam very, very much. So, but yeah, if you just like running around blowing stuff up, attaching balloons to tanks, and then driving them around because you can, well, at $20, not so bad.
I approve. I always approve of discounts. And 67%, that's like 2/3. In fact, you know, it is 2/3.
Wow.
Josh,
me.
You had a pick.
You know, it's time if you're, getting a little tired of your current Kindle. They've upgraded you now, $129, waterproof. It's got a more interesting, smoother bezel. There's no dips and things. It's lasts longer. It's got more memory. It's got Audible. You can attach Bluetooth headphones to that mofo and listen to Audible.
Interesting. And it's got a wet look.
It does. You can drop it in water. You can read it in your bathtub. And
that's what I'm thinking. I was looking at this picture. It looks like you're at the beach or something. Like, no, what people are going to use this in the tub. That's where I would use mine if I wasn't scared.
And so
of
I mean, every year or 2 year, they really do a significant upgrade, and so it's more efficient, pulls less power, battery lasts longer, it's waterproof. It's got the paper white bright thing. It's got the LED lighting at night, and it's just fantastic if you like reading books and not having a soggy paperback. I really wonder what the carbon costs are versus, like buying a paperback, because you're essentially sequestering carbon in that versus downloading a multiple megabyte file. I'm
You're talking about the carbon footprint of a Kindle download versus a book?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on how long you use the Kindle for.
Because I'm a nerd that way, but then you got to talk about shipping and then processing. Yeah, it's probably.
All I know is I wouldn't have a callus in the middle of my hand thanks to Brandon Sanderson's Oathbringer.
That's a rather large book.
Yes, it is.
A really good.
Wait, why did you have a callus in your palm? What were you doing while reading this?
Because he was holding onto a rather large book.
It's that thick.
It's 780
Oh, is it?
pages.
It's that thick, Jeremy?
Oh, mine's 1,200.
Quit bragging.
I can go get it for you if you want.
No, I don't pull it out. Don't pull it out on the video.
Don't pull out the big 1,200 pager.
Yeah, don't pull out the girthy. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, it is. I forgot.
Yeah, mine's soft cover, but frickin' hell, it's weighty.
It's such a good book. I can't wait to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I actually have a pick for the first time in about a month, I think, which is something that I recently bought. I physically have it, and of course I didn't grab it, so it's upstairs. I'm not going to go get it right now, but I have a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. I think I got it last Christmas, and I haven't even used it yet. I keep waiting. I had all these ideas and plans for it, and of course I've been too busy to do anything. But the case was a big thing for me. Like, what am I going to put this in? I have all these custom cases, and I'm a retro computer nerd, so I'm thinking I'll get like a little custom made Atari ST or like a Amiga 500 case for it. And I found those on Etsy, and they're like $25 or $30. On Amazon, you can buy from Retro Power. They make little like Lego compatible like brick cases for, and you can buy it in the NES, Super NES, Genesis, and you build it yourself. Like, this is 307 bricks, this one that I bought. I got the original NES. And I liked this one because the front is hinged, where you'd normally, like the design where you'd put in the cartridge, that you lift it up and you put in the USB and Ethernet. And I liked that aspect of the design because the SNES one is just open on the front. But this thing looks great. I think LGR did a build of this. I'll have to see if that video... I think he did a build of this. So like the Retro Power people sent him a couple of these. But so you can find that on YouTube. $15 though. All three of these are $15 of free Prime shipping. And very impressive. I mean, I'm sure I'll be even more impressed once I actually open the box and build this. It'll be another year. I'm baby steps. I've got the case, I've got the Pi, and maybe by 2022 or so, I'll actually have the two together, and then I'll be one of the many who have Retro Pi going in my living room. But I think that's our show for this week. It was a shorter one, but we'll be back. We'll be back chatting about more and more things, and hopefully there'll be more concrete announcements about things. Hey, maybe by the next time we talk to you guys, we'll have even more new hardware releases to talk about. But until next time, thanks for watching or listening.